Okay, today we're going to learn the halacha if you're allowed to buy herring or lax without kashrus. We had last year many shiurim on which products you don't need kashrus, so we're going to add a few more items to that list. So I'm reading from inside of the tour, Yeredeya Siman Pei Gimel. Tsir Dogim Tmeim, if you have a juice from non-kosher fish, Enam Ela Midrabanan. That's only Midrabanan. So why do you need to know it's the rise of the Rabbanan? Lefichach, since it's the Rabbanan, Mutar Liknas Me'anochrim, you're allowed to buy from Goyim, Dogim Meluchim Tehoirim, kosher salted fish, which is, that would be herring, as we're going to see soon. Some of them are going to say clearly we're talking about the herring, or we're going to see Lamaisa. Again, I want to only focus on those two. It could be more to that list, but that's what for sure that they mentioned clearly. Again, mutar ligan me'anachim dogim meluchim tohirim afal pi shemunachim imatmeim bekli echad shemel ani meluchu yachad. Even you're going to the Goyish store and he sells over there on the counter, he has herring and he has non-kosher fish. You're allowed to buy the herring. So because what could be the chashash? Maybe he sold them together, maybe not. So memela sin at tzveka d'rabonon, we don't have to choishish for it, and you could buy it. Okay, I'm not talking about now. If you're going to a place, kimat nobody today is selling open herring. They're selling already prepackaged the herring, the lax. But in case like the olden days, you go to a fish market and they're selling over there a herring on the counter, and you see also non-kosher fish. You could say over here a tour, you could buy the herring without a problem. Now, just gonna. For the background of this halacha, and I'm not talking about this case of the tour, I'm talking about the case that's a lot more kosher, but even then he says you're allowed to. Just as a background, I'm just going to mention over here, the Beis Yosef brings like this: Dogim temeim enol midrabonon kach kosa varosh v'aran v'arashbo. So major posts can bring them. Even the Bach brings two toisvas. One toisvas in Maseches Chulin saying like them, it's midrabonon. Then there's another Tosfos in Maseches Avodah Zorah. He brings over there that's the Araisa. However, even though he says it's the Araisa, if the only chashash from the fish that was what was mixed between the two, the kosher non-kosher fish was the tzir, the juice. He says since the juice is not something tangible, meaning you can't see a full body on it. The mele is it's a bottle, but Lamaisa, without, like I said, most posken at Bechlal Drabon. Okay, then he brings like this. B'chedesh b'tshuvas Rav Rabbeinu Yisrael, the stam dogim meluchim, nagu boim isur, regular, it says, salted fish, we don't buy from a goy when we see it together in the same kli with the non-kosher, chutz me herring umakresh. Again, the herring, I know what it is, everybody knows. She'en dogim tmeim nimlochim emoim, because the custom was that they not salted the herring with other fish, it was salted on its own. But there's no chashash, maybe something non-kosher over there. He says, then you bring like this. Yeah, Ba'goy sharadura, nochrim amochrim dogim, meluchim tohoirim. Says that they're selling the herring. He says, kolzman shen onureim benem dag tome, as long as you don't see among them, among the herring, dag tome, the non-kosher fish, are elu mutorim. V'oidi says, and more furthermore, da'achzuke isur lo machzikinan. You don't have to choshesh, maybe something got mixed over there, something osur. Va'afilu echa de'ike levarer. And let's say you could find out. Well, how about you make a phone call, you're going to find out, call out. He says, don't have to do that, he said. Even where you could find out. But furthermore, you see on the counter, he sells the dogim tameim, he says, no problem. Even though it's a middle, not like separate, middle of, you have herring, and in the middle you have something non-kosher, throw away the non-kosher, eat the herring. Yeah, anyway, he goes on and on. I want to bring from this, again, not even going that far away, that it's mixed. When you see just herring and just lax. So here's what it says in Shulchan Aruch. That's I wrote. It was the tour, the Beis Yosef. The Shulchan Aruch in the same Pei Gimel Alocha Hey. Tzir dogim tameim, the juice of non-kosher fish and ela midrabanan lefichach, and that's why mutar liknas mahavet kechavim dogim meluchim tohirim. You're allowed to buy salted fish. Again, we're talking about herring as lekula alma. Aval b'shem menachim ematemeim. Even though you see in the same counter, in the same place, there is dogim tameim bekli echad. I'm saying a counter. He says bekli echad. It's in one bucket. Shema lo nimlechu yachad, because what's the heter? Maybe they didn't mix. Maybe they didn't salt them together. Memela, if they didn't salt them together, maybe yes. So it's the rabbanon will make it. Okay. The Ramos says, "V'yesh osrim imunachim imatmein b'chovis achas." If it's in one barrel, some saying it's also some. He says, "V'chen no yagim." The minhag should only knoisen afilu im roim shemunachim imatmein maluchim be'erbu ala shulchan shemachim. The minhag goes not only when one barrel tome non-kosher and kosher together. You don't buy the kosher, even though just on the one counter kosher. The minhag is not to buy minhag. However, Milvadi says behering umarkerish. The matirin b'chol inyan. It says again, markerish. I'm not sure what it is, but the herring we all know. Even that's on the same counter, you could buy the herring. The matirin, the vada enim lochim imatmein. They're for sure not being salted together with the tameim. And the Shach explains that was the custom. They used to take them out of the water. This herring fish. Koirim oisam, they would tear in the middle. Umoilchim, kol echad levadoi, they would salt it each individually. V'toilin oisam, they would hang them under the sun. Umafridim oisam zemizu, they would separate from each other. K'dashish ladam haruach v'achamo v'yisyapshu sham. They used to dry them like this. The male is no chashash that they sold them with the non-kosher. He says, v'afilu b'shar dogim. Buy the herring, you see on the counter, herring and non-kosher, you could buy it if at the same counter. Others fish, he said, if you don't see over there on the counter something not kosher, you could buy it, and you don't have to go lepashpesh. You don't have to go maybe, no maybe. If you see it, it's nothing there, just kosher, you could buy it, he says. Then he goes like this. At the end of that, Ramah, v'davka de lesbu shamnunis. Only if you don't see over there a real fat. V'stam dogim meluchim lesbu shamnunis. If you don't know what's called fat, what's called juice, he says stam dogim meluchim herring. There's no fat over there. What you see over there, it's a juice. It's called tzir. Aval in isbu shamnunis. If you know. Not if you assume or if you know for a fact they have oil over there, fat, not oil, fat, osur midaraisa, because maybe they mix it, and if it's a suffix, maybe they mix it with non-kosher, with sveikel chumra. Yeah. Now, on all this he says, then he says like this, even they dried up and they sit together if we're machmir. But again, if you buy them individually, there's no problem to buying the herring and lax. I didn't read the lax inside of it. I'm going to read it soon from Aruch HaShulchan. It says like this. But the Ramos says that you don't, when you see a fish on the counter, kosher fish, you don't have to look maybe, no maybe. There's only kosher, nothing there. You could buy it. It says, you don't have to go look for it. It says, the Shach says on this one, the achzuke isura lo machzikinan. We don't assume maybe something non-kosher was here. That's what we mentioned from the Beis Yosef brought from Shara Dura. Even you could find out, make an investigation. You don't have to do it. It says not like by shchita we say kulam becheskas kashrus. By shchita we still have to make investigation. Who's the shoichet? Over here he says you don't have to do that. The hoche ono matirim adogim mekoach chazokah. We know there's an assumption, a strong assumption, chazakah, that those was done the right way. Like we said, they used to do them, just sold them individually on their own. And adraba, amrinan, in this case we say by the fish, there's no reason to choshesh to any isur. Okay, so we see from here, even there is, the heterim goes that far, even you see some dag tome among them, okay, there's a minogim not to do it, but when you see an individual herring sold, especially today, in a jar or in a plastic individually, there's no problem. And in the Losh of the Aruch HaShulchan, he says, he talks about all this fish that there's no problem whatsoever to buy them, that you don't have to choshish, maybe it's something not kosher. Mix some of them, it is like this. Some people want to be machmir, especially today. We so got used to captivate that if there's no kashrus on it, it's not kosher. It's not so. The olden days there was no kashrus, you knew what to buy, what's not to buy. Just you knew how they do things. If you're machmir and those things that are kosher to buy and you don't want to buy it, and I mean, it's not normal your behavior. You could question your behavior. All these other fish, I don't know what they are, but one thing, laxen, I know it's lax. It says all this fish that they moist, it says, there's no concern, it says, you could buy lax without OU on it, without any kashrus on it. Among lax, there's nothing tameh, that's salmon. V'shomaiti, he says. So it comes out that the Chumrah says, every time there was such a machmir, they tried to find a problem with even a kosher product. V'shomaiti shebe'eze are lita. In some Litvish community, in some, lo yu'echlem adogim ma'yeveshim shalonu. He says he brings some kind of names again. I don't know if I don't know those names anyway. But kayotzavel v'lo as a tam. I don't know what's their problem. He says why they don't eat it. V'gam shamati she'echad ma'agdolim b'dor shlishes l'shalfanenu. 3 generations ago, he says one of the gedolim in the literature was going against this chumras. Some say it was machmir. Somebody there were a dispute on this, and this which was matter them thereof that we tiran lofim asher be'arnu. It says according to what I explained over here. You could look in the same thing. Pei Gimel Lamed Beis by Aruch HaShulchan and Shum Tam Uklal La'osram. There's no reason to ask them. According to this, if you see lax, again, you have to be lucky to see today lax and herrings without OU, because I think they manipulated, they're dominating this market. They have monopoly on this market. So they have kashrus and anything. Yeah, they have kashrus because it doesn't need to be kosher. It's kosher. So anyway, but in case you go somewhere in the world or you find a company that sell you lax, and I'm not talking about if there's special additives or they have some wine over there. No, those are obviously you could question what they add to it, and the wine won't have to be a kosher wine. Then I'm talking about regular lax, regular herring without any additives. Or if they have added, they tell you in the ingredient what they are. It looks to you kosher ingredients. They don't need kashrus, and you could eat them. Like I said, we got used to it. We're captivated by this. If you don't have a piece of paper, it's not kosher. But it doesn't have to be this way. Again, herring and lax don't need kashrus. Avram Meir, yeah. All right, shkoyach.